Welcome everyone to this deep dive. This is actually the 13th in our series focusing on mastering Microsoft Azure Fundamentals.
That's right.
And today we're zeroing in on managing and deploying Azure resources.
A really core topic.
Absolutely. You've shared some fantastic material, and our aim today is really to unpack the essential tools Azure gives you. How do you actually get the most out of the environment?
Yeah, cut through the complexity a bit.
Exactly. Highlight the key ideas, the practical stuff. So, okay, when you're working in Azure, it's not just about like individual services, is it?
No, not at all.
It's how you manage them, how you bring it all together. And it seems Azure offers, well, a few key ways to tackle that.
That's a really crucial point. I mean, having powerful services is great, but orchestrating them, managing them efficiently, that's where the real power lies. And yeah, the sources point to several key tools for this. The Azure Portal, Azure Cloud Shell, then you've got Azure PowerShell and the Azure CLI. Each offers a slightly different way to engage.
Okay, let's start with the Azure Portal. It looks like a website, obviously, but I get the feeling it's much more than just, a pretty interface.
Oh, absolutely. Think of the Azure Portal as your main control room. It's web-based, it's unified, it brings everything together visually.
Right.
So you can build, manage, monitor pretty much everything, simple web apps, really complex deployments. It's the graphical way in, especially if command lines aren't your thing.
Makes sense. So approachable.
Very approachable, yeah. Especially when you're starting out.
And you're not just looking, right? You can actually configure and build stuff directly there.
Oh, definitely.
Also saw something about custom dashboards. That sounds handy.
It's incredibly useful, actually. You can basically pin the resources that matter most to you onto a custom view.
Ah, okay.
So you can see their health, performance, whatever you need, just at a glance.
Nice.
And what's quite impressive is the tech behind it. It's designed for continuous availability. It's resilient. It's actually present in every single Azure data center.
Wow.
Which means you get a responsive experience pretty much wherever, and they roll out updates constantly without downtime for you. That kind of reliability is, well, it's a big deal.
Yeah, that's huge. Okay,
Yeah.
So that's the visual side. Now, Azure Cloud Shell sounds a bit more technical.
Yeah.
Like a command line, but in my browser.
You've got it exactly. Azure Cloud Shell is a browser-based shell. It's like having that command line power accessible anywhere you can log into the portal without installing anything locally.
Oh, that's convenient.
Yeah, really handy for quick tasks, running a command without firing up a local terminal or installing tools.
And it supports both PowerShell and the CLI, so you can kind of pick your flavor.
Precisely. Flexibility is key there. You can use Azure PowerShell with its CMDlets or the Azure CLI with its bash-style commands.
Right.
Whichever syntax you're comfortable with or maybe already know. Plus, it handles your Azure credentials automatically, which simplifies things quite a bit within that shell environment.
Okay, so Portal for visual, Cloud Shell for browser-based commands. Then we have Azure PowerShell and Azure CLI as like standalone tools you can install.
Correct.
What's the real difference between those two? When would I pick one over the other?
Well, think of Azure PowerShell and the Azure CLI as more direct, programmatic ways to talk to Azure's underlying APIs.
Okay.
Azure PowerShell uses commands called CMDlets. It's built on .NET, so folks familiar with Windows or scripting in that world often gravitate towards it. It's great for managing complex, interconnected resources using what we call imperative code.
Imperative code.
Yeah, it's like giving step-by-step instructions. You tell the system exactly how to do each task. Do this, then do that.
Got it. Like a recipe.
Exactly like a recipe. And because it's code, you can script it. Automate repetitive tasks. Imagine needing, say, 10 identical dev environments.
Right.
A PowerShell script can automate that whole setup, ensuring consistency, saving loads of time compared to clicking through the portal 10 times.
Makes perfect sense. And the Azure CLI. Similar idea, different commands.
Pretty much. The Azure CLI serves the same purpose, but uses bash commands. So it's often preferred by people with a Linux background or developers comfortable with that shell syntax.
Okay.
Like PowerShell, it lets you handle tasks, orchestrate complex stuff through code, totally scriptable for automation.
And you can install both anywhere. Windows, Linux, Mac.
Yep, installable on all major platforms, and like we said, both are available right inside the Azure Cloud Shell, too.
So the main difference really just boils down to syntax preference. CMDlets versus bash.
That's the core of it, yeah. Functionally, they offer very similar capabilities for managing Azure. It's mostly about which command style feels more natural to you or your team.
That clears things up nicely. Okay, let's pivot a bit. We've talked about managing resources inside Azure, but what about companies with stuff, outside Azure, on-premises servers, maybe even resources in other clouds?
Ah, yes, the hybrid and multi-cloud reality.
That's where Azure Arc fits in, isn't it?
Exactly. The sources really emphasize this growing trend. Organizations often have infrastructure in their own data centers, some in Azure, maybe some workloads on AWS or Google Cloud. It gets complex.
I bet.
Azure Arc is Microsoft's answer to managing that complexity.
This is kind of like a bridge, bringing those non-Azure things under the Azure management umbrella.
That's a great way to put it. Azure Arc essentially extends the capabilities of Azure Resource Manager, which we should definitely talk more about, out to these hybrid and multi-cloud environments.
Okay.
And the big benefit isn't just seeing everything in one place, though that's helpful. It's about applying consistent management, consistent security policies, compliance rules across everything, no matter where it lives. That used to be a major headache.
Wow, okay. Unified management across different locations sounds like a massive win. What else does Arc bring?
Several key things. By projecting those non-Azure resources into Azure Resource Manager, you get seamless integration.
Ah, so they appear in Azure, sort of.
Exactly. You can then manage VMs, Kubernetes clusters, databases, wherever they are, almost as if they were native Azure resources.
Right.
This means you can use familiar Azure tools and services like Azure Policy for Governance, Azure Monitor for logging across the board. Arc also helps bridge traditional IT operations with, modern DevOps practices. And it introduces this idea of custom locations to abstract some of the underlying infrastructure details.
Interesting. And what kind of resources can Arc actually manage outside Azure? Is it just servers?
No, it's pretty broad now. It can manage physical and virtual servers, definitely, but also Kubernetes clusters, certain Azure data services running anywhere, SQL Server instances, and even VMs hosted on other platforms, though some of that might still be in preview.
That's quite a range.
It is. The goal is that consistent management experience, simplifying operations, giving you that single pane of glass view across potentially very diverse infrastructure.
Really compelling stuff. Okay, so Arc helps manage across different environments.
Right.
Let's zoom back in now to how Azure manages things within Azure itself. You mentioned Azure Resource Manager, or ARM. Sounds fundamental.
It is absolutely fundamental. ARM is the core deployment and management service for Azure, period.
Okay.
Think of it as the control plane, the orchestration engine that sits underneath everything you do in Azure. It provides that consistent management layer for creating, updating, deleting resources.
Right.
Like the sources point out, every single interaction, whether you click in the portal, run a PowerShell CMDlet, use the CLI, call an API, every request goes through ARM first.
So even a simple click in the portal goes via ARM.
Precisely. When you make a request, ARM first authenticates and authorizes it, checks if you have permission.
Makes sense.
Then it takes your request, your desired state, and talks to the specific Azure service responsible for that resource type, telling it what to do. Provision this, modify that.
And because all requests go through this one central point,
You get consistency. The same API handles everything, so you get predictable results no matter which tool you use to make the request. Portal, CLI, PowerShell, same underlying engine.
that consistency must be invaluable for complex setups.
Yeah.
What are some other big benefits of using ARM?
Well, a huge one is the support for declarative templates. These are typically JSON files where you define the entire desired state of your infrastructure.
Ah, declarative. So instead of how to do it, you say what you want.
Exactly. You describe the end state, I want 2 VMs, a load balancer, this network configuration, and ARM figures out the steps needed to make it happen. That's a cornerstone of infrastructure as code.
Right, IRM.
ARM also lets you group related resources together logically, which helps with managing their life cycle together. It ensures consistency, from dev to test to prod. You can also define dependencies within those templates. So ARM knows, okay, I need to create the network before I create the VM that uses it.
Handles the order automatically.
Yep. And crucially, it integrates tightly with Azure Role-Based Access Control, RBAC. So you control who can do what.
Security baked in.
Absolutely. And finally, tagging. You can apply tags, basically labels to resources for organization, but they're also super useful for tracking costs and billing.
Okay, declarative templates sound really powerful. Here's the blueprint. Azure. Go build it.
Yeah.
That definitely links to infrastructure as code.
It's central to it. IAC is all about managing your infrastructure using code, just like you manage application code. version control, repeatability, automation.
Right.
And ARM templates, along with something called Bicep we should touch on, are the main ways you do IAC in Azure. You use tools like Cloud Shell, PowerShell, CLI to deploy these templates repeatably.
Okay, so IRM templates are the sort of original JSON-based way. What are the specific wins when using them?
Well, that declarative syntax is key focus on the what, not the how. Because they're templates, you get repeatable results, consistency every time.
Guaranteed environments.
Exactly. ARM handles the orchestration, managing dependencies, figuring out the deployment order for you.
Okay.
They also support modularity. You can break down complex setups into smaller, reusable template components, makes things easier to manage and maintain.
Like building blocks.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And they're extensible. You can even run PowerShell or Bash scripts as part of the deployment for custom configurations. Oh, and ARM can often deploy resources in parallel when there are no dependencies, speeding things up.
Faster deployment's nice. So a really solid foundation. Now, you mentioned Bicep. The sources bring this up too. Sounds related, but maybe simpler.
You're spot on. Bicep is what Microsoft calls a domain-specific language, or DSL. They designed it specifically to make writing Azure deployments easier.
Easier than JSON.
Generally, yes. Think of it as a more user-friendly abstraction layer on top of ARM templates. It has a much cleaner, more concise syntax, easier to read, easier to write compared to the sometimes verbose JSON and ARM templates.
Sure.
But here's the important part. Bicep code ultimately compiles or transpiles down into standard ARM JSON templates before it gets deployed.
Ah, so under the hood, it's still ARM.
Exactly. Bicep leverages the power and validation of ARM, but provides a better authoring experience.
So what are the specific advantages Bicep offers then, if it becomes ARM anyway?
The big one is that simplified syntax. It drastically reduces the amount of code you need to write compared to JSON, making it easier to understand and maintain.
Readability.
Huge factor. But importantly, Bicep gets immediate support for all Azure resource types and API versions the moment they're available in R. There's no lag.
Well, good. No waiting.
Right. And like ARM templates, Bicep ensures consistency through idempotent deployments.
Idempotent, meaning you can run it again and again.
And get the same result. It only makes changes if the current state doesn't match the desired state defined in your Bicep file, like setting a thermostat.
Got it. Safe to rerun.
Very safe. Bicep also automatically handles dependencies, deploys in parallel where possible, just like ARM, and it has excellent support for modularity, breaking code into reusable modules.
Okay, so if both ARM templates and Bicep get you to reliable, repeatable deployments, how do you choose? Is Bicep just better now?
It often comes down to preference and maybe team skill sets. ARM templates are the foundation. They're mature, extremely flexible. Some people are very comfortable with JSON.
Right.
But Bicep's simpler, cleaner syntax is a major draw for many. It can significantly improve the writing and maintenance experience, especially for complex environments or if your team finds JSON a bit unwieldy.
So less boilerplate, easier to read.
That's the main selling point. Both are powerful, valid IAC tools for Azure. Bicep just aims to make the authoring part easier.
This has been incredibly useful. We've really covered the waterfront on managing and deploying in Azure.
Yeah, quite a tour.
From the user-friendly portal and the handy cloud shell to the scripting power of PowerShell and CLI, then bridging worlds with Azure Arc for hybrid and multi-cloud.
Right, bringing it all together.
And finally, diving into infrastructure as code with ARM templates and the more streamlined Bicep. You can really see how all these pieces fit.
Absolutely. They provide a flexible toolkit, whether you like GUIs, command lines, or full infrastructure as code. Understanding how they connect is key to really mastering Azure management.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive today on Managing and Deploying Azure Resources, Episode 13 in our Mastering Microsoft Azure Fundamentals series.
Hope it was helpful.
Definitely. And for everyone listening, if you want to continue your learning journey and explore Azure further, be sure to visit learnazureforfree.com.
Great resource there.
Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive, and bye till next time.
Bye, everyone.